It's the Carson Price for Friday, October 4th, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver, heading to a game in downtown, and there are plenty of them this weekend. Make it a staycation. Book your stay at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Carson Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches, conducting things. Big show coming up, heading into a gigantic weekend of sports for Vancouver teams. We'll get to all of it over the course of the show, and we'll start with our poll question. Will the Canucks win the Pacific Division? Yes or no? You can vote at the Carson Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price.
Hello. I think they'll be in tough to win the Pacific Division. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's impossible. I think, again, to borrow Jim Rutherford's phrase now, a lot of things would have to go right. And I also think they're going to be smart. Now, I think Oilers will be smart too here, that I don't think the Oilers or the Vancouver Canucks are looking to definitively win the Pacific Division. If it just so happens that they are so good that that's where they end up, no one's disappointed, obviously. But I don't think that's a goal of either side. Both sides want to go on a deep run. And so I think you could see, for the first time ever, I think these are two teams that will think in a modern way in terms of, this is my hot take, maintenance games off in March and April for the Stars on both of these teams. And that ultimately might, that might cost them 4 points, say. I'm just arbitrarily saying 4. So if you were scheduled to get 108 points, but you've diluted your lineup a little bit, maybe you're down to 104 points. That's going to be tougher to win the division. So I'll say no.
I'm going to save the prediction for next week, but here's what's important. And you asked a question to Rob Williams yesterday saying, do you think Canucks fans are over the regular season? Like, there are a number of teams that when you're a perennial Stanley Cup playoff team, invariably somebody in October will say, can we just start the playoffs already? If you're Carolina, who's been in it.
That's different than what I just said, though.
No, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I don't think we're there yet. I think the regular season is meaningful to this team and its fan base.
Yep, I agree.
And yet, for me, it's not necessarily where they finish in the regular season, but whether they advance in the playoffs and advance past last year's second round and game 7.
Yeah.
To me, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where Judgment Day comes for the Vancouver Canucks. Because needless to say, as we get into our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery, the Stanley Cup odds and predictions are starting to trickle in. Just about everybody picking the Edmonton Oilers to win the Pacific Division, if not the Stanley Cup. Completely understandable. They made it to Game 7 of the Cup final last year. Have 2 of the 5 best players in the world and look to have improved over the offseason, or at the very least to add to their scoring punch. Bet365 has the Vancouver Canucks as the 8th choice to win the Cup at plus 1,400. Do understand this about betting lines. They're not designed specifically to be predictive. They're designed to get action. So like the New Jersey Devils are the number 2 choice on Bet365. And look, a lot of people feel good about the Devils. Look at the lineup, see a lot of goals there, see a defense that's getting better with Hughes and Nemec. And of course, their goaltender, Jacob Markstrom, and they kicked off the NHL season in Prague with Buffalo today. But that's not the New Jersey Devils as the second best team in the league. That is people thinking, Devils could really do some things here. It's worth $1 or $2.
Yes.
The Athletic, very bullish on the Vancouver Canucks. Said Bet365 had them as the 8th choice. The Athletic has them as the 4th choice with a 9% chance of winning the Stanley Cup. They've set the over-under on points at 105.4. This for 109.2.
Which is what we had them at, too, is the over-under, 105.
95% playoff chance. That's third best in the league. 31% chance to win the division. 18% chance of advancing to the third round, the conference finals, which is also third amongst NHL teams. Heading over to MoneyPuck. MoneyPuck has them as the 8th best odds to win the Stanley Cup at 5.6%. So Athletic at 9, MoneyPuck at 5.6. A 80% chance to win the division. Or sorry, to let me get this straight here. A 21% chance to make the third round of the playoffs, an 80% chance to make the playoffs. So MoneyPuck is actually very cautious in terms of the Canucks making the playoffs. And you wonder whether that is fueled by the Thatcher Demko
on that MoneyPuck graph. You want the wider wedge of a bigger piece of that pie. And you can see the Canucks have a pretty big piece of it there.
Oh, yeah. A significant piece. So, yeah, add it all up between Bet365, the Athletic, MoneyPuck, and there will be other predictions that come on in.
There's some respect there.
For sure. This is a team that has gained league-wide respect. That was a big thing last year. Both team and players weren't getting a lot of it, and we heard your mouth on it, especially with guys like Quinn Hughes. But one of the things that we kept going back to last year was the reason why they're disrespecting your team and your players haven't won anything. Haven't come close to winning anything.
Okay, so let me put this forward, and you can comment on the YouTube chat immediately if you feel so inclined. But how does that strike you, Canucks fans? Because, and I don't mean in a jinx sense, because we don't believe in jinxes on this show. But players react differently. I think organizations react differently when there is the pressure, when there is the expectation of winning, of success in the macro, not just in the micro. It's going to be interesting how this team, like they had pressure, but they knew that their winning the cup last year was effectively making the playoffs. And they went well past that, going to game 7 of the second round. That was great. A lot of fun. But that's not the end goal here any longer. It's a higher bar, and how this organization makes its way through that, how the players react to it. Yep. And then, of course, there's just luck too, and injuries and all that sort of stuff. So, it's going to be very interesting.
And of course, that higher bar set by Patrick Alvin when he came out for the year-end media availability with management last year following the loss to the Oilers. And we'll get to it in a second. Quinn Hughes and the players basically took a thank you lap and had Rogers Arena applauding them even after the defeat, because everybody understood that was a successful season for the Vancouver Canucks. And then here came Alvin dropping a gauntlet saying, nothing to celebrate. Not our goal. More aspirational than that.
Yep.
Got to understand it gets really hard from here. So, which frankly was music to my ears, because for too long in this market, and particularly messaging from the club, it was far too close to moral victories than it was to Stanley Cup victories. So we've entered now a new realm with these Canucks. Those of you who are old enough to remember 2010 through 2012, you can slip back into those, back into that mindset. And look, Blake, as I survey these predictions, odds, everybody has Vancouver squarely as a top 10 team in the National Hockey League. And for me, the goal, the mission this year should be to be a top 4 team in the NHL. Ken Holland rule, one of them. If you make the conference finals in this league, unless you're a defending cup champion, unless you're a team that's been to the finals a couple of times and it's Stanley Cup or bust, that is a successful season. And for me, that is what I would measure these Vancouver Canucks on.
I mean,
if they can play for the Western Conference Championship, that's a step forward. That is successful.
It's just math and logistics. There are 32 freaking teams in this league. If you're down to the final 4 of the 32, you've left 28 in your wake. That's a hell of a season. And I mean, if you're one of the final 4, Matt, you've played 2 more months of hockey than the teams that didn't make the playoffs. I mean, that's a lot.
Well, not quite 2 months.
6 weeks.
A month.
6 weeks. You're playing till the end of May.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's 3 rounds. You're right.
6 weeks. 6 weeks. Anyway,
you're playing into June with this year's calendar. Again.
That's a significantly big difference for teams that don't make the playoffs. It's going to be fascinating to watch how this team progresses, and I think that Connor McDavid clip that has gone viral now, right freaking now. That's a
Wait a second, you misquoted him.
Yes, sorry, right fucking
more on that later in the program. Blake's inability to curse effectively.
That was the desperate bellows of the best player on the planet, who only then had gotten a real chance to win the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Like the best player on the planet from the moment he set foot on National Hockey League ice, basically. And it's taken him that long to get a sniff near the Stanley Cup.
That looked and sounded like a different creature.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, he waited so long, so many years banging his head against the wall in that team. And finally they were close, and you could hear it. Like, he did not want to let it slip by, and ultimately he did. But
yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard trophy to win.
It's the hardest trophy to win in all of sports.
So again, right? Final 4 is a very good year. Yeah.
It's up with our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood.
Well, it's beer week, believe it or not.
Beer week for me every week.
It's true. Penticton Beer Week. It starts today. And the good news is it lasts right through Thanksgiving weekend as well. So if you're planning on being in the vicinity for the long weekend coming up, you can stop by. Yellow Dog's hosting a puppy hour in the dog park, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's tomorrow. There'll be a photo booth set up. Friends from Dog Days Treat Truck will be on site as well. And proceeds from every pint sold will be donated to the BC SPCA. But rest assured, Yellow Dog and Neighborhood will be fetting Penticton Beer Week, which is almost 2 weeks long.
Wow, and you're gonna want to follow them on Insta.
Yeah,
for all the cute dogs.
Yes, dogs, as you go.
Final dress rehearsal tonight at Rogers Arena versus the Edmonton Oilers, and we can now say, barring any late scratching calamity, JT Miller and Teddy Bluger are going to make their preseason debuts. Miller had been saying this all week. Bluger, when we last heard from him,
was playing coy.
Was unsure. But there's JT Miller, and it looks like a representative lineup, everybody. If you're going to the game tonight, this looks like a representative lineup from the Vancouver Canucks for Wednesday's home and season opener against the Calgary Flames. JT Miller between Danton Heinen and Brock Besser. The local kid Heinen gets great real estate there on left wing of the Canucks top line. Elias Pettersson beside Jake DeBrusque, the big free agent addition, and Daniel Sprong, the afterthought free agent addition, who had to wait beyond July 1st, weeks beyond July 1st before he got his deal. He's an offensive player. He's a shooter. He's a scorer. Does he have good defensive detail? Does he play between the dots? And of course, our first look, I guess they've played together already in preseason, but Paterson and DeBrusque, what kind of chemistry is there? Because that was one of the things. And look, even if you were harsh on Elias and thought that the knee tendonitis was an excuse why he wasn't as good in the second half and in the playoffs, one of the reasons why he wasn't as good is that they just weren't good enough on the wing. They did not have enough wingers to give him the sort of scores he requires to be all that he can be as an NHL centerman. So DeBrusque beside Peterson, and with Sprong playing on the right wing. Ratu gets the gig in the middle of the third line
with good wingers,
with Connor Garland and Niels Höglander. A lot of umlauts on that line.
That's true.
But this was one of the things we were wondering yesterday, going, okay, if Bluger's back, where does he slot? And who do they want to look at for a final test for that exclamation point? Can Ratu put an exclamation point on his bid to make these Vancouver Canucks? He's got a fantastic opportunity in the middle of that third line. Bluger's going to make his preseason debut beside Kiefer Sherwood, and Arshdeep Baines, the pride of Surrey, he gets a final opportunity as well to show Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff that he wants to be a Vancouver Canuck on the opening roster or the opening night lineup. Nils Oman skating as the extra forward, as we talked about yesterday. They know what Oman is. They know what Oman isn't. They want more intel on Ratu.
That's right.
And on Baines. And as we also discussed yesterday, hey, there's a world where only one of those three guys makes it. There's a world where all three of those guys make it, because there is no Pius Suter here, Blake. He had missed a couple of practices this week. So you got to wonder about Pius Suter's status now. He's got a week. He's got some time here, but you got to wonder about his availability for the opener. We know Dakota Joshua will not be available as he recovers from testicular cancer and surgery. So there's a world where one of Ratu, Baines, and Oman is kept. There's a world where three of them are kept. Some of it has to do with health. Some of it has to do with salary cap implications.
The good news is Akita Hirose was on the ice as well. That means he's healthy-ish, and that should clear the way for him to get off the salary cap 5 days from now. If he's healthy enough to twirl right now, it means he's likely healthy enough by the time they need to get everything under the cap that he can get sent down to the American League. They don't have to accommodate for him on the injured reserve and all that. So that's a big a big thing to happen for the Canucks as well. But I really hope Ratu rises to the occasion here. I hope he's a great story going into the regular season. And the good news, the thing why I've got more hope for what, and this applies to Baines too, nobody's looking to make their NHL debut here. These are guys that have got a few weeks of NHL pedigree under their belt here so far. Nobody should be wide-eyed about what the NHL looks like and feels like. They've been there and done that. Both Baines and Ratu know what the speed of the NHL is like. They're both a little older and wiser than when they made their debuts. In particular for Ratu. Ratu goes back a couple of years now. Let's hope they use all of that to just play their game and push out all the noise, push out all the pressure, and just be the players that they are. And I think both guys have what it takes to be everyday National Hockey League players. Let's hope they show it.
She loves in goal?
I would think.
Yeah.
Yes. He stayed late and faced the power play, so that's a good sign.
Speaking of that power play, we have those alignments as well. I don't think anyone will be surprised with the first unit that has Brock Besser as the net front guy, JT Miller on the left flank, Jake DeBrusque, the newcomer, in the middle in the bumper spot, Liz Paterson on the right side, and Quinn Hughes, of course, as your quarterback. Let's hear from JT Miller about the new guy in the bumper spot, Jake DeBrusque, and how he feels that'll work.
Just more comfortability of me being on that side again. With my righties in the middle, it's not really an attractive spot for me to play. So having that threat to shoot in the middle like we used to with Horvat, it's nice. So we're talking a lot. It's just finding tendencies. Things will click once we start playing some games.
Bo Horvat mentioned from JT Miller, harkening back to the glory days.
Well, but I mean, Bo scored a lot of goals from there, and he's right. As a left shot, he can find that passing angle a lot easier than with a right shot there. Elias Lindholm that was not the ideal fit there, and we remember how the power play struggled in the second half and in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which kind of makes the numbers I'm about to read sound even better. Blake, they were 11th in power play percentage last year in the league at 22.7. They were 9th in net power play percentage at 19.9. So they were a top 10 power play, despite the fact that we spent a good part of February and March and April just talking about the outage.
Well, the back half of the year was not as good as the front half.
Right. Yeah. But, think of how great they were early in the season, that you floated still 22 and 20% rates on that power play without doing a ton after the All-Star break and after the trade deadline.
Now, hidden at the end of that clip from JT Miller, though, is it'll be fine once we get a chance to get going here. And some people might say, well, then why wouldn't you have done a couple of games with everybody together so you have a chance to get going so that come the regular season opener, you're not still trying to find your touch?
Yeah, well,
maybe just
in the
2
case
games
of
with everybody.
Miller, well, but in the case of Miller, they were being
you're
cautious.
right. You're right. They were being cautious, and he was banged up. So maybe less concern there. But for everybody else, there is a chemistry thing. Couple games, 2 games, most everybody playing. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Okay. Second unit, Niels Höglander is your net front guy. Daniel Sprong, a right shot on the left flank. So needless to say, setting him up to shoot the puck. Danton Heinen in the bumper spot with Connor Garland on the right flank. Philip Hronek as your back of the diamond power play quarterback there. You mentioned Hirose. That could be very handy in terms of setting the opening night roster and getting as close to the salary cap as you can. Because as an injured player, he would not have been, couldn't have sent him down. So that he's back skating is great. Blake, I'm going to play your game.
Okay.
And only because he's a former Vancouver Canuck and a right shot and on the final year of a contract. Ethan Bear is on waivers from the Washington Capitals today. Now, I'm not sure that this management group were the biggest Ethan Bear fans. Of course, they dispatched him.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What's he make? $2 million?
$2 million.
What do you think?
You know what? I followed everybody else's lead on Ethan Bear. There are a lot of Ethan Bear truthers in the media who extolled his virtues and his underlying numbers and all that sort of stuff. So I assumed that all of that was correct and that he was a worthwhile player at the right price, all that. I never watched Ethan Bear and thought, wow, just love the way he plays.
Wow, but we watch a lot of players without saying wow.
No, but
he's a pretty good skater.
I think we can look at
handler.
unspectacular players and still have that respect. Chris Tanev has never been a spectacular player. We still love the way he plays. So I just never got it.
So Blake, here's what people forget. Ethan Bear did pretty well beside Quinn Hughes. And you can sit there and say, well, a lot of guys did well, can look good beside Quinn Hughes, and fair enough. But outside of Philip Hronek, do you want Myers? Do you want Desharnais? Do you want Juleson beside Hughes? Would Bear not be an upgrade there? Does that not allow you to split up that pair if you need be? Does that not provide you cover?
You got to believe, though.
Go down. And then secondly, we've talked about puck transporting and mobility on defense. Bear is certainly an upgrade to forward or Desharnais there, is he not?
I think so. I mean, he's effectively Tyson Barrie. He's not as offensive as Tyson Barrie, but he's a good skating player.
Your guy Barrie got a contract.
He got it signed right after we finished the show yesterday. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. And he's at, I think, 1.2. I think he's much cheaper actually than Bear is. But but he's not as responsible defensively probably as Ethan Bear. So it's interesting. It's interesting. It's going to be touch and go though. Like let's say you just deleted Noah Juleson from your mind. The cost difference. I don't know that the Canucks can take that on right now. You know, that's a significant cost difference than having Noah Juleson in your lineup. So how do you make that happen if you're the Vancouver Canucks? And we've got somebody who is Steven on the YouTube comments. Do you think the Canucks will run with the 22-man roster this season? I think it's 21, Steven.
Yeah, well, Puckpedia has it cut up as a 22-man roster, Steven. And Hart Levine and the Puckpedia guys are really sharp on this stuff. So,
but if you want Ethan Bear, it's 21 to start anyway. Like I don't know how else you.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, so on the Puckpedia roster that we talked about yesterday, they had Oman on the team. They had Baines and Ratu down. It was a 21-man roster that came, if I'm not mistaken, $91,000 or thereabouts away from the salary cap. We talked about how because the salaries of Oman, Baines, and Ratu are all very similar, those three were effectively interchangeable, although, of course, Oman would require waivers. So, yeah, I haven't done the math on Bear, but that stands to reason, Blake, that it would be 21.
Not that Washington's going for it, so they're probably not, but they do have some cap issues. If he clears, maybe you wait for Ethan Bear to clear, and you phone up the Washington Capitals and say, listen, you've got now $800,000 in the AHL that's on your cap because he's above the 1.3 threshold, so $700,000. And you say, fourth round pick, and you eat half of it, and he comes to you, he comes to you at $1 million, and then you can bury him if you need to,
or maybe you send them Pullman and give them even better pick or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, interesting situation over the next 24 hours, and there will be a lot of interesting names here on waivers over the course of the NHL weekend. We're just going to get to this, and then we're going to set aside. J-Pat's going to join us here from the rink in moments. Former Vancouver Canuck Tanner Pearson has made good on his PTO with the Vegas Golden Knights. He signs today a one-year deal at $775,000. This, of course, with the cap space gleaned by Vegas after successfully lobbying the National Hockey League to terminate Robin Lehner's contract and gain cap space. And I want to say, in the 24 hours since all that has happened, and we discussed it on yesterday's show, I had people in my mentions going, Maddie, you got to go off on this. This is terrible. I just want to say how heartwarmed I am that the ABV community has grown as it has. When I was, when I founded ABV, we were a small group. We were up against a wave, a torrent of people telling us why we were wrong, telling us that they were such a great story, telling us that it was something that we had to get behind.
Do you have merch? Do you have ABV merch?
And our position was, no, this is a franchise that has received preferential treatment from Gary Bettman and the National Hockey League, and it's just not right. And I am so pleased that so many of you in the intervening 7 years have come on board with that. No, I do not have ABV. I probably should.
Yeah.
We speaking of merch, we opened got some new S&P swag.
Nationgear.ca. We sent out a link on our Twitter streams, and maybe have we buried it yet, Mike, in the YouTube?
No, there's a post out on social media.
We should put it in our YouTube.
We'll put it in the YouTube
you want to pin it, Mike?
As well.
Okay.
But
go ahead and pin it, Mike. There's Mike talking. Oh, he's on the mic.
It's good looking stuff. So go check it out. Nationgear.ca.
Quinn Hughes, Vancouver Canucks captain, is playing a second preseason game. Played 3 last year. Let's hear from him.
Yeah, just the way it kind of worked out. Last year I played 3, felt really good. This year, feel good. It's my second today, and just play as many as I'm told to play.
I go where I'm told.
Well, that wasn't that wasn't sort of the deepest answer from Hughes, but if you're looking for depth on Quinn Hughes, this new Amazon Prime series, Face Off, Inside the NHL, which is out today. Media members got a sneak preview of all of this, including the episode on captains, which features Quinn Hughes. There's some interesting stuff in there. David Quadrelli has written a nice article about it on Canucks Army, and invites you to go check that out. He acknowledges that his leadership is growing because, as we talked about last year, he's on the quiet side, right? He was kind of like a Henrik Sedin growing into the role. Okay, you've been a quieter guy in the room, and now it's time to have a fuller voice.
I saw him on Jackie Redmond show on NHL Network. I mean,
yeah. Oh no,
very open, like he having some fun.
He is absolutely growing into the role, and also growing into his stature as one of the great players in the National Hockey League with a Norris Trophy, and all of that is terrific to see. He even talked about how he asked Tocchet, like, so when do I go in the room and tell them not good enough after you've left? And, Rick sort of said, like, well, that's one of the things you got to figure out as a as a captain.
Right.
Much is being made of the Quinn Hughes Book Club as well. He talked about reading 20 to 25 books last year. Titles including Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, the late Anthony Bourdain. Fantastic book if you haven't read it. Bourdain was not only a great writer, but it's a terrific insight on the restaurant industry. The Best American Poetry, Blake. He's a Renaissance man. He's reading poetry books. Not to mention things like Cinema Speculation, Quentin Tarantino book, and How to Win the World Cup, Secrets and Insights from International Football's Top Managers. So there you go. That's what's on his bookshelf. Looking forward to watching this Amazon Prime series because needless to say, they have gotten behind the curtain in a way that very few shows have with hockey players in the past.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we have to try to normalize the fact that they are human beings. And at times, like I think some people are having some fun at Connor McDavid's expense based on his speech there. But it's still so much better than thinking of him as the automaton that we used to think of him, right? Like,
oh, it's a million times better.
We like, and I hope too, and this is the big hope, that when guys like Connor McDavid maybe see some of the feedback and see that some people are taking the piss out of him for how he's swearing or whatever, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I hope that they don't say, oh, there was any sort of, again, playful derision. I don't know how you want to describe it. At the quotes, like, that's okay. You're going to be okay. Like, nobody's really taking you down as a person because of it. Like, I just hope that everybody's okay with personality.
Oh, geez. Gosh, I hope so. In today's day and age, when you're competing for attention spans across millions more potential outlets and distractions than ever before, this was absolutely necessary from the National Hockey League. The producers of this series did the highly successful Drive to Survive series that launched F1 into a whole new realm of popularity with new fans coming from all corners.
But they were okay being heels, right? The guy's a heel and they're okay being heel.
No, but that was the deal with the producers and all the F1 brass and the teams. Like, look, we need raw. We need real.
Yeah.
We don't need veneer.
No.
Well, we don't need beige. And that's one of the reasons why it worked. And I'm looking forward to this Amazon series. Let's bring in Jeff Patterson, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver, our Vancouver Canucks reporter, who is at Rogers Arena and took in the proceedings this morning. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, guys. Yeah, Oilers wrapping up their morning skate behind me, and I know it's the preseason finale, but boy, guns a-blazing here. I mean, all of the big guns on the Edmonton Oilers are playing. They're basically going with their opening night lineup. So, yes, McDavid and Draisaitl and Skinner. There's two Skinners, Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, Stuart Skinner's going to play in goal, but Ekholm and Bouchard on defense. So it looks a lot like the Oiler lineup that was here back on May the 20th, the one that defeated the Canucks in Game 7. And for the Canucks, JT Miller and just about everybody. Teddy Bluger's getting into his first preseason game tonight. Obviously, no Thatcher Demko, but the healthy guys, they're going to play in this one. So, yeah, preseason action, but nice-looking lineups on both sides in this one.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned Game 7, this Amazon Prime series. Hughes asks his teammates as the game ends, should we salute the crowd? Like, they were a little, what do we do here? We know it's been a good season, but it was a loss on home ice, and sure enough, they did salute the crowd. How about our buddy?
Just thinking about Quinn and the Amazon series here, we go deep into the weeds here. That's why I come to the rink to find things out. He told us this morning that the books on the shelf are his still to get to books, not the ones that he's crushed to this point.
Good to know. He's going to love Kitchen Confidential. You mentioned the Oilers lineup. Is our old friend Vasily Podkolzin one of the 12 forwards here for Edmonton this evening?
He's just looking at their lineup. He's on a fourth line with Corey Perry on the other side. Perry played higher in the lineup the other night on Monday when they were at home, but this may be where Corey Perry ultimately slots in for the Edmonton Oilers. So Corey Perry and Vasily Podkolzin, the wingers, on a fourth line for the Edmonton Oilers tonight.
God help us all if Vasily Podkolzin becomes a player for the Edmonton Oilers this year.
Yeah.
Jeff. Okay, so Miller and Bluger making their debuts. Oman as the extra, and Baines and Ratu, a final opportunity here to impress the coaches and see if they can make the club. Your thoughts on the final battles here and the final auditions?
Well, I think for Ratu, and we should mention that P.S. Suter skated on his own before the group this morning, so that's progress. And it was nice to see Akito Hiroshi back on the ice. He showed up a few minutes after the start of morning skate, but was out there. That's a good sign for him that he's getting closer to full health after the concussion, but also good on the books for the Vancouver Canucks because they'll be able to send him down to Abbotsford if he gets the clean bill of health here. P.S. Suter's not going to play tonight, but I think the hope is that he'll be ready for Wednesday. But in the meantime, in the short term, Ratu. I mean, it's go time for him again, and he's had such a good camp and a preseason. And there's that comfort level playing between Nils Höglander and Connor Garland, the two buzzsaws that have been buzzing about all preseason as well. So that line looked good in Calgary when they were together the last time out last weekend, and it's a real opportunity for Ratu. We'll be watching him as he does his flip the stick thing in the faceoffs as well, because nobody else in this lineup has had particular success in the faceoff circle. It's a small thing, but I do think it's a separator for Ratu, particularly over on the right side, and he's had some success here through exhibition play. So, people that haven't had a chance to see him, if they're coming to the game tonight or they're watching on television, he's, I think, going to be one of the guys that is circled here and is going to draw a fair bit of attention. As for Baines, great opportunity. Like, I'm such a big believer in the preseason in getting in the lineup. They played Max Sasson 5 games in 7 nights. Like, that's a huge ask for anybody, but you can't show what you're able to do sitting in the press box. If you're a player, you want to play. And so for Archdeep Baines to get tapped to play tonight, a last chance to make an impression, to continue to build on the things that he's done. Scored a goal in Edmonton the other night in the power play. He's not in the lineup to score goals. If they come, that's gravy. But for him, it's, win puck battles, use his speed, try to drive defenders wide, create some space for some other guys out there, basically create havoc, and see what comes of that on a line with Teddy Bluger and Kiefer Sherwood on the other side. So, with Sherwood, there's some size and some tenacity and speed as well. And we'll see if Archdeep Baines sort of falls in with that group and what he's able to accomplish. But, just getting a chance to play when Nils Oman isn't. Oman can't do much up here in the press box, but Archdeep Baines certainly can out on the ice.
Jeff, you were very astute earlier in the week when you told us, hey, guys, be prepared to see a roster set at less than 23 players because of cap implications. And we saw Puckpedia yesterday mocked it out as a 22-man roster to start things. Ratu v. Baines, who's ahead in that derby, and does it pivot on the availability of Pius Suter on Wednesday to play the middle?
I think it has to. If Suter's healthy, he's going to be in the lineup. There's still a question about where does he best slot. Pretty useful guy last year, the Swiss Army knife, and spent much of the second half, obviously, on the wing with JT Miller and Brock Besser, and they know that they've got that card to play. Pius Suter's had a really quiet preseason. You don't expect a ton of offense. He scored an empty net goal in the home opener here, but he's had real trouble in the faceoff circle. And so I keep coming back to faceoffs, but I do think it is a separator for Ratu. So we'll see how things go there. I think there's always just a little more weight placed on the guys that play the middle as opposed to the wing. And Ratu can play the wing and played, by all accounts, played his best hockey down in Abbotsford out on the wing at the end of the season. Archdeep is a winger through and through. And so, let's see if there's some special teams battles tonight. Is Ratu used as a penalty killer, again, with that face-off utility? So as I sit here right now, based on their camps in the preseason, I think Ratu has had a better go than Archdeep Baines. I thought Baines' camp was fine. I think he's had moments here in the preseason, but if I'm just comparing one against the other, and it's a little bit of apples and oranges, but I would say that Ratu is ahead of Archdeep Baines, and certainly a little bit more professional experience, obviously, than Baines as well.
Suter's in the lineup, I agree, if he's healthy. But, I think there's a world. If Ratu shows well between two professional wingers here, I think there's a world in which he does win that spot over Suter, don't you think? I mean, if they get points tonight, if they look good tonight offensively, can Ratu just not the roster spot, but the lineup spot? Can Ratu steal that from Suter?
Yeah, I think he could. I know that Rick Tocchet's been impressed. Tocchet talked about the switching of hands on the faceoff and said, I just love the confidence of a guy trying that at the NHL level, even if it's in preseason. Ratu said that, the numbers down in Abbotsford suggested he was better percentage-wise on faceoffs on his right side, which is his weak side, but he's able to make it his strong side by flipping the stick. So, Tocchet's taking notice. And again, Suter, not a great faceoff guy through his career, and certainly hasn't had a ton of success in the preseason. So Suter's got to get healthy first and foremost. Of course, they've got a little time on their side here. Don't play for keeps until Wednesday night. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly something to watch through the weekend here. We'll see if Suter gets back with the main group as they practice, or, if he needs more time off here. Boy, every day that you get closer to that opening night, you have to think that Ratu could hold down that third line center spot. And the other thing is, and you mentioned Blake, I mean, two legitimate, not just NHLers, but goal scorers, guys that have been 20 goal scorers in Höglander and Garland. Boy, Connor Garland, and not a surprise, but his motor has been running since day one up in Penticton, and I think he has looked really good every night out in the preseason. Doesn't matter where he's played or who he's played with. Connor Garland's just been doing Connor Garland things, and it's funny to think of where we all were in this discussion with him at this time last year, where he had switched agents, and the suggestion was he wanted out, and there were no takers, and now it just feels like such an important piece to what the Vancouver Canucks are trying to put together with three scoring lines here at the NHL level.
With two representative clubs tonight, the good news is that we might be a competitive game. The bad news for Canucks fans potentially is if Connor McDavid and company decide to use their afterburners, we're going to see what Forbort and Desharnais are made of, aren't we? This is it's all in theory right now that it's going to work there on that back pairing, but if somehow Connor McDavid gets out there with those two on the ice, it's going to be an interesting experiment.
And I think from a coaching standpoint, as much as the Canucks deployed Susie and Myers and, tried to keep McDavid to the outside, did a reasonable job of that in that series. I hope that there's not hard matches here in a preseason game like this one, because I think you'd probably like to measure
measure
forward at times to get a look, to see. There are some questions about foot speed, obviously, with Forbort, and puck skills with Desharnais, and some of those same questions about the guys that occupy that second pairing in Susie and Myers. Better skaters, both of them, but puck skills can be an issue at times. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be something that bears watching, obviously, as the season unfolds, because there is, I don't think there's much doubt that, at this time last year, Ian Cole, and Cole sort of faded, and I think his age started to show as the season went on, but he got off to a decent start, and then obviously the addition of Nikita Zadorov, they had better depth on defense, and they're going to roll with this group to start this season, and we shall see what it looks like. But I'm with you. I think that is certainly something to keep an eye on whenever that pair gets out on the ice tonight.
Goaltending and Sheloves, it's absolutely a fait accompli. He will be the starter on Wednesday night, Jeff. Is that your understanding from being there?
Yeah, I mean, just reading the tea leaves, he's going to go the distance tonight as long as he stays healthy, and knock on wood for him that he does. The Canucks goaltending doesn't need any more chaos at this late stage. So the plan is to get Shelovs in there and let him play all 60 or perhaps more, depending on how the game goes. And then I have to think, based on his utilization here in the preseason, he's had 3 starts. Lankinen obviously late to the party. He got his 2 starts, and he's looked all right. But, yeah, I just think it's all lining up for Artur Shelovs to be the starter on Wednesday. Again, no back-to-backs till the middle of November. And so I really do think that they can platoon here. They can try to ride a guy with a hot hand if another guy needs a little bit of time to work with Marco Terenius, the goaltending coach. But, their hand isn't going to be forced by the schedule in the early going. And so it's going to allow lots of practice time, lots of video work, all those types of things. And I do think that you're going to see a 2-goaltender system for the first 10 to 15 games.
Yep. Lastly, from me, Jeff, just pick up on the clip we heard from JT Miller earlier about this power play, and we all bemoaned the power play in the second half of last year and into the Stanley Cup playoffs, despite the fact it was the top 10 unit when it was all said and done over the course of 82 regular season games. But DeBrusque in the bumper spot between Miller and Patterson, with Besser as the front man, and Hughes as the quarterback. Needless to say, power play was such a big part of their early season success, and it sounds very much like JT Miller is excited about having DeBrusque left shot in that spot.
Yeah. They tried to move JT around a little bit as they showed some different looks, saw him down in the right corner trying to set up there. But ultimately, as a left shot guy, trying to make that pass to the interior or down low so they can set up the bang play to the guy in the bumper. JT's just, he's got more freedom there on the left side. So that's his best position, I think. I'm still not thrilled with the idea of Elias Pettersson basically as a decoy, but I mean, we need to see what before he shows up here to start the season. But we know that he's got an elite level one-timer, and they don't use it an awful lot. But if it can draw defenses out of position and create some room on the inside, then I suppose that there is an importance to that role. I think
Jeff, can I just ask something here? Because, we talk about him as a decoy. We talk about him as the one-timer. Is there anything preventing Elias from taking the bull by the horns and walking down on the goal and threatening goaltenders like Miller does on the other flank? Like, some of this is on Petey, isn't it? Like, he's just got to be a little more assertive in that spot from time to time. No,
I hear you, and I think there has to be some freedom to be able to do that and some creativity. But they do seem to love working the puck between JT and Quinn, and eventually trying to work it to the interior. And look, they had a ton of success. Bo Horvat became one of the power play aces in the National Hockey League, but Bo's not here. They do have a left-hander, but I think it's going to be worth watching. That Jake DeBrusque doesn't have a ton of experience and hasn't had a huge degree of success on the power play. Some of that was Boston had other guys that played in front of him, obviously, but he's been around. Patrice Bergeron certainly had his success. Marchand is a net front guy and coming off the wing. So he's seen successful power plays. Now it's a great opportunity for him to be a part of one here. So some of that's on DeBrusque to, I think, read and react and try and get that feel. It's something that I thought we were going to see a little more of through the preseason, obviously, with Miller not playing and Quinn Hughes only playing the one game out in Abbotsford. They just haven't had a lot of opportunities to apply all of that. But I am told that they've exchanged ideas. They've done video sessions with Yogi Sevkovsky, who's overseeing this power play now. But they're going to roll it out here tonight, and we'll see what this new look power play one looks like for the Vancouver Canucks. And I think there was some intrigue, too, about the second unit. Now, when Dakota Joshua is healthy, whenever that is, I think he'll have a role on the second unit. But it does look like tonight, if they get power play opportunities and they go to PP2, you're going to see Garland and Höglander. You're going to see Danton Heinen, Daniel Sprong, and Philip Hronek will be the guy at the point.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Just let everybody know what's coming up on Rinkwide.
Yeah, we got a little dust off the other night on Monday, so hopefully we're a little further along on the curve. We're back at it tonight, and then away we go. All 82 games after every game that the Canucks play this year, and 82 in the regular season, and let's hope that there are a bunch more in the playoffs as well. We will be there live streaming moments after the final buzzer, or far most nights, but we'll have a rotating cast of characters as the season progresses. So it was fun to get back in the swing the other night. Looking forward to this one, and we'll have lots to talk about. Forget the result, but just with the star power involved, and obviously some of the late lineup decisions and roster moves between now and Wednesday. So Rinkwide immediately after this final preseason game for the Canucks and the Oilers.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. We'll be listening tonight, and of course joining Rinkwide all season long, and we'll catch up with you on Monday when I think we'll know a little bit more about what this opening night roster is going to look like. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Have a great weekend.
Jeff Patterson, everybody, the host of Rinkwide and our Canucks reporter. So I get to the tee at Northlands yesterday, and the starter, and shout out to starter Marshall Ed, says, Matty, give me a Canuck, a dark horse, to up their production this year. I think it was a fantasy hockey thing.
Okay.
Happy to entertain. Pius Suter, going to play in the middle, or at least start in the middle. Going to start in the middle between some decent players offensively. 20 goal scorers in Garland and Höglander, right? If he's healthy. He's healthy. Last year was nearly a half point per game, second best of his career. far and away his best Corsi season of his 4 in the National Hockey League. Prefers playing the middle, is an intelligent hockey player, may get some better matchups, isn't really the lost guy on the wing with Miller and Besser. I just wonder if Suter is, again, if he's healthy, if he's sitting on a 40-point season here. Career high of 36 right now in 82. That's his only 82 game season. I just wonder whether Pius Suter could be a step-up offensive player.
Ratu
Very few people are talking about him. You've got guys like Blake who are trying to replace him already on the third line with Ratu. To me, that's rushing the fences. To me, that's getting a little too drunk.
Well, you
on
earned
a
it.
young player in preseason.
You earned it. If you don't put him there if he's not earning it, but he's earning it. So if he continues to earn it, you play him there. He's a higher skill player ultimately than Pius Suter is.
You think that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that remains to be seen. I just wonder
it's possible
whether Pius Suter.
The good
might
news
be
is
a
there's
bit
two
of a
possibilities
breakout
there.
offensive player,
right? There's
yeah,
two,
no, for
like,
the Canucks for sure.
Like you've got an insurance plan there on the third line
absolutely.
center role, which is kind of nice.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to today's menu, and it's brought to you by our friends at Greta. And boy, terrific weekend to be at Greta. Hockey season right around the corner. You got the baseball, you got the football, you got the soccer. And of course, once hockey season does get going, Greta, a great spot for all games home and away. We will be there October 19th for a Canucks Army viewing party, and that'll be the first of many throughout the season. Your minutes from the arena or the stadium. Good pregame spot, good postgame spot. Check out the great street food menu, the Smash Burger, the Big Mac poutine, and the arcade. Halftime intermission. It's a go-to spot. Weekly drink specials, Greta, 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. Well, a gigantic weekend, as we said off the top in Vancouver sports, because you have the two, you have both the Lions and the Whitecaps in the final stretch of their seasons, and both of them need tourniquets here. You need to stop the bleeding. If you're the BC Lions tonight at BC Place, you need to stop the bleeding if you're Whitecaps FC tomorrow afternoon at BC
They're both
Place.
home games. You've got the opportunity.
It's a huge weekend at BC Place. It is beatable opponents. In the case of the Whitecaps, you're up against a direct competitor for station in the MLS West. In the BC Lions case, you've got an opponent that is last in the West Division that you absolutely need to beat, or guess what? Suddenly you're threatened from a postseason point of view, not to mention you are unlikely to host a playoff game in a year where you are hosting the Grey Cup. So we will check in with friends Giulio Caravatta of course, the Lions Radio Network. Hear the game tonight with him and the Moj on CKNW. We will check in with Whitecaps CEO and sporting director Axel Schuster as they prepare for their final 3 regular season MLS matches, having clinched a postseason berth, but they're not out of the play-in game just yet, and they have upward mobility to 4th place in the West. In the case of the Lions, they have lost the chance to keep destiny in their hands and get 1st place in the West, but they could still get 2nd place in the West, which would host the West Division semifinal, and we've seen that game here in BC Place for the last couple of years. So looking forward to talking with Giulio and with Axel, and of course, Giulio leads off with a
story. You got to hear of them. Dad stories,
old man, his dad in the garden.
They're legendary. I had not heard this one.
I had not heard this one either. Here's the other thing. We told you there are some show changes coming starting next week with the new National Hockey League season. And here's what we can tell you. Show's now going to start at noon Pacific time, starting on Monday and going forward. Noon gives us a little bit more time for Jeff and others to glean information.
Especially on game days.
Also dovetails nicely with a lot of your lunch hours. So, starting Monday, make a note, noon Pacific time is when we will be starting the show.
Tell your friends.
Each and
noon
every day. Also starting Monday, no more hashtags segment. We'll still get to some odds and ends here and there in the program, but a bit more of a concise show for you. We know your time is valuable. And we're going to leave this one to Monday. We've got a new regular guest coming into the program. He'll be on Mondays. And I say new, well, he's been with us in the past. So we'll unveil a new guest to our regular lineup on Mondays. All of that serves as today's menu. Let's get to our Bet365 bets of the day. The segment proudly brought to you by Bet365, partner of Sekeres and Price and Blake. I'm looking at the Sunday nighter, Dallas at Pittsburgh, and Cowboys fans feeling better about their team after beating the Giants on Thursday Night Football last week. They had the longer rest. And of course, you typically have to pay a premium to take America's team. They get a lot of action. And you're paying the premium here, in my view, because you got Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs, arguably their two best defensive players, both nursing ankle injuries. So I'm going to take the Steelers and lay 2.5 points. I love to lay that under a field goal. That oftentimes makes the decision for me. If I'm getting 3 or 3.5, I'm going to take it. If I'm laying less than 3, I'll go there. So give me Pittsburgh minus 2.5 on Sunday against the Cowboys.
You can do a halftime, full-time parlay on soccer matches. I'm going to guess, and it's looking good for Ryan Gauld to be involved for the Whitecaps tomorrow. I'm going to guess Stuart Armstrong doesn't start, though. I think they're saving that for the following weekend. So, but I'm guessing they give him a good run in the second half. So I'm going with a halftime tie, followed by a full-time Whitecap victory. Pays out a plus 450.
Well, you're going deep.
Yeah.
Open account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. You're going to want to hear this Giulio Caravatta story. It's coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next interview brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians, thanking Seas fans for another great season at the Nat this spring and summer. If you're looking to guarantee your seat for all the action in 2025, please visit CanadiansBaseball.com or 604-872-5232. And you know, if Levi wasn't the best groundskeeper in the Northwest League, they might call on this guy to help them tamp the mound as he did at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto as a kid growing up.
Oh my gosh.
It is our pleasure to welcome in the BC Football Hall of Famer. Congratulations, Giulio Caravatta, on your most recent appointment there.
Well,
nice
thank
to see
you very much, guys. Yeah, it's great to see you guys. It's been a while. Thank you very much for that. Oh, the ground crew days. That's a long
I think
time
now,
ago.
though, if you were in charge, there'd be tomato plants down the right field line. Right?
Oh, I don't know if I ever told you that story, but as a kid, right, I had a bag full of Major League Baseball. So when we used to go up to the park and play like 500 up or start hitting baseballs, we had Major League Baseballs, a bat. And so I had probably 30 balls in there. And one day I came back and there was probably 5 in there. And I'm going, what happened to these balls, right? So, of course, I know his history. I went to my father and I said, hey, what did you do? What did you do with my baseballs? And then he was all proud. He brings me into the backyard. So I told you I used to cut my hockey sticks to hold up the tomato plants.
Yeah.
Well, because the hockey sticks would deteriorate because of the wood, he decided to move to 1/2-inch steel, rebar.
Yeah.
To hold up. So I went in the backyard and there were 20 baseballs that he cut 1/2-inch holes into them and put them on top of the rebar. And I'm just like, what are you doing? He goes, hey, your mother, when she picked the tomato, she poked the head. So this is to protect the head. How do you argue with that?
Oh my gosh.
So my whole backyard was lined with Major League Baseballs on top of half-inch steel. And then a couple of years later, when I got into golf, he saw the golf balls.
Same thing.
He drilled those because they were smaller and they were less intrusive.
I was going to say, if your mom would bang her head on the baseballs, it would sound like a game in the backyard. It would just be like melon on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, how do you argue with that? Julio, there was no arguing with men of that era from old country. All right.
He said, what do you want to do? You want to play with the balls or you want to eat? Well, that's what he would say to me. And you're right. How do you argue with that?
See, and I thought you were out of old Julio stories. No, never ending well.
Never ending
well. Well, buddy,
we're postponing Lions talk for good reason.
Good.
What's going on here, Julio? We thought they'd turn the corner with the road wins, with the road performances. How does that team the same as this team? What's going on?
I don't know. I honestly, guys, I've gone over it and over it. I just can't put my finger on it. And in the end, it really is. It's about execution. It's basically on offense. You know, there's those. You know, we always hear the same adage all the time about those 5 or 6 plays during the course of a game that you've got to make in order to decide the game. And the Lions just can't find a way to make those plays now. Whether it's a crucial catch, a second down conversion, a tackle, an opportunity to make a sack, getting themselves off the field defensively. It's just one after the other. And you know, given all the problems they have, like, I mean, they lost in overtime, right? They still had a chance at the end, given what they did in the second half. But you know, right now, I think too, guys, one of the big problems is they're just fighting it, right? It's like any athlete that starts to lose their confidence. They start to really press and overthink and try to do too much. You squeeze the ball a little bit tighter if you're a quarterback trying to make something happen. And that's where this team is at right now. So they need, you know, obviously they need a win. There's just no other way to put it. This is a big game for them tonight.
Where's Nathan's confidence right now?
Yeah, I have to think that he's pressing, right? Like he just doesn't seem like he's very comfortable, or he looks like the same Nathan that we saw a couple of years ago. And given the circumstances of where he's, you know, how you get plopped into a locker room halfway through the year, and given, you know, what he was coming into, you know, Vernon was having such a good year, and you know, there was a lot of pressure on him to kind of just pick up where he left off a couple of years ago. And I think he's just like anybody else, right? I think he's a very competitive young man who puts a lot of pressure on himself to be successful. And as it is right now, I think he's just pushing a little too hard. So, you know, and here's the other thing too, guys. And I've talked to him about this. The game defensively in the Canadian Football League has changed. The philosophy has changed. There's a lot more teams that they're very, very content in rushing 3, rushing 4, and dropping a lot more defenders and forcing the quarterback to be patient and nickel and dime a team down the field. We saw a perfect example of that last week with Bo Levi. I mean, I think he only had 2 completions of over 20 yards. Everything was underneath, you know, dinking and dunking his way down the field. And that's the reality of the game now. They're saying, listen, we're not going to give you the explosive play. We're not going to, you know, make it easier on you. We're going to force you to put 8-10 plays together and move it down the field. And if you can do it, we tip our hats to you. If you don't, then you're going to be in trouble.
And it makes a lot of sense, Julio, because, of course, that was the Wally Buono defensive philosophy. There was always going to be a deep safety. We were going to get pressure with 4, make sure we were good on the defensive line, get pressure with 4. It's very similar to what Stubler was doing with the match defense way back when, of course. But now these linebackers, they can freaking cover, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've got a different and better, more agile athlete at the second level, and so you're able to do it even more, make it even more.
Which is why guys like Javon Couture are key, right?
Absolutely,
because they're
big
strong
targets.
and tall, and you'll get your 12 yards with Javon Couture, even on one leg, apparently,
because he's going to break a tackle too after he catches the ball.
Absolutely, you guys hit it right on the head. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And then the other thing that you see now too, because that linebacker is he's so quick and fast that when you can rush three, the whole idea was, oh, you rush three. If the quarterback gets out of the pocket, now all of a sudden he can really cause you problems. Well, that linebacker sits about 3 yards from the line of scrimmage, and as soon as he sees the quarterback step up into the pocket, he's shooting like a rocket to get him, right? So now all of a sudden it's not as clean to get out. You now have pressure coming from somebody else, and that athlete, like you said, Matt, he's much faster, he's quicker, and he's not going to allow you the time to look downfield, right? So it's going to take, the offense is a little bit of time to try to combat it. They do, but the key is the quarterback. The quarterback needs to be patient. Matt, you can remember this. You brought up two very good examples with Wally and one with Rich Stubler. Stubler used to tell me he hated to play against Dave Dickinson because Dickinson was the one guy that if you said dink and dunk your way down the field, he would do it.
Yeah.
He would be patient. He would take what you give him. If it wasn't there, he would throw it away. He'd say, okay, go ahead. I'll punt. I'll live to play another series, but I'm not going to turn the ball over. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'm going to play the game smart. And that's essentially what you need to do. Like the thing is too, guys, is, and this is, again, Dave told me this a long time ago. Quarterbacks inherently, they have the mindset, they want to win on every play. They want success on every play. And one thing you need to learn as a quarterback, that you're not going to win on every play, that your defense sometimes is going to beat you, and you need to accept that. And don't make the critical mistake of turning the ball over and, giving them life and giving them momentum. I'll throw it away. Yep. If I have to take a sack, I take a sack, but I punt and I let my defense play. And
Julio, and that's one of the most, it's the hardest position to play in all of sports. That's one of the reasons why, it's because that decision has to be instantaneous.
Yes.
Right? Like you don't get to dwell on, oh, we're beat here. No, you've got to throw it away, or as you say, take this. Punting is not a bad thing from time to time. Turnovers are. Rick Campbell, how patient can he afford to be with Nathan tonight?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a tough spot to be in, right?
But Vernon's fully healthy, right? Like you wouldn't worry about Vernon's health whatsoever. Okay.
Yeah, there's no holding him back. He's ready to play. So, in the end, the game's about winning. And if, although I would find it very shocking if Nathan goes out and lays a complete egg, I don't think that's in his game. But you also have to say that if he does struggle, that you're going to need a spark at some point. Right. So it's a fine line, guys. You're dealing with that confidence too, right?
Yeah. They would never say this, but if he fails to finish the game, if they lose the game, does Vernon Adams start the next one?
Yeah. Wow. That's, I'm going to be glad that decision is going to be way above my pay grade. So that's an excellent point. And I'm sure that's going to be one that's brought up because, you just don't want these last couple of games to, that they're must-haves, right? Like if you win today, you're going to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. And then all of a sudden next week, you're going to Saskatchewan to probably play for a home playoff game. That's where you want to be. You don't want to be going there having to win just to see if you can get in the playoffs.
Right.
Julia, we were talking about hosting the West Final, hosting the Grey Cup. Like all of it was on the table.
A minute
ago.
What a year. I think all of us, though, pretty much when all of this was happening, like we all realized, if you watched the game and especially this year, the West was never going to be a runaway by one team. It was going to be a real, fight to the end, and it still could very well be. Winnipeg's schedule is not easy. They've got 3 tough games. I think Hamilton, Montreal, Toronto. So they have this tough road, right? And all those teams are battling and fighting to try to, solidify their positions where they're going to be. So it's not going to be easy for anybody, but in the Lions case, you got to take care of your own business. And they had an unbelievable opportunity last week and blew it. Now there is no blowing it. They need this one, and they need it badly.
Yeah, and we've talked about like first place in the West could be out of reach if Winnipeg wins that game in Hamilton prior to kickoff tonight. You're rooting for the Tabbies, not just because of that, but maybe it lights a fire under them before kickoff.
Matt, the other part too is let's not forget Hamilton is breathing down their throat too.
Oh, I know. We talked about an Eastern crossover this week, Julio, in October. Like we've never done this.
No,
Julio,
I know.
Julio, is this the best CFL season you can remember?
Oh.
Like, I mean, we've had better seasons, I'm sure, but I mean, I don't remember 9 teams having this, like some semblance of threat to do something. And Calgary's now fading a little bit, but there's 9 teams that are in the mix up until this point. I can't remember the last time.
Yeah. 41 games decided in the last 3 minutes, 27 games decided by 4 points or less.
Yeah.
I mean, like it has been one of those years. Like you think about where Edmonton is, right? Like they're still on the edge of it, right? But they lost 3 games in a row on walk-off field goals. Walk-off field goals, 3 of them in a row.
Oh, their roller coaster.
Where's your season? Yeah. Where's your season if one of those games or 2 of those games goes in your way? It's been a crazy year. It's super exciting, but for the Lions' sake, a little bit too. It's getting a little uncomfortable now, and they need to change it.
Hey, last question here, and it's another tough one, and I hate to do this to you, but hey. When you're a kid who's had his dad steal his sports equipment for gardening purposes, you've dealt with tough situations.
Yeah.
Before.
Oh, he's ready. Yeah.
I don't necessarily perceive it as a lack of talent, Julio. Sure, I think you'd like to be better on the offensive line, a little more depth in the secondary and at receiver and all of that. Maybe you don't have the pure natural pass rusher, or at least you didn't until Betts came back. But it's a pretty talented team. Yeah. These Lions. How nervous would you be if you're Rick Campbell and the coaching staff here? Because I can't imagine this is going to go over well with an owner who has done everything to try and make provide you with the tools for success here.
Yeah, and that's I think that's pretty evident when you go out to practice, right? Like you can feel the pressure, right? And that's the nature of the beast, right? That you said it, when you have an owner who's done what he's done for this team, and you're hosting a Grey Cup, and the way that you started and now how it's all kind of gone sideways on you. Of course, there's pressure. But all those kinds of things will be if they find a way to get in, then they'll probably ease. If you don't, then those things are only going to heat up, and that'll be topic number 1. I think if they find a way to get themselves out. I obviously hope that's not the case. I really like Rick. I think in this day and age, coaching wise, I think he understands the athlete, because that's a big difference than back in the day when you didn't have to worry about that stuff. Nowadays you do. There's a different way to approach them, and he, I think, has that. But they just, all that aside, in the end, you got to win. And if you don't win, you're in trouble, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quarter century behind the microphone as the color analyst will be watching and listening tonight. Julio, he's got the call with the Moj on CKNW, a massive game.
Yes.
For the BC Lions against the Stampeders.
Who's doing stats? Mike Whittingham? Is he beside you?
Mike Whittingham has taken a backseat role. He doesn't.
He's executive producer now. Okay.
He's the executive producer.
Wait a second. Now. He's taken it. When did he have a front seat role? You never put him in the front seat.
No,
did I ever put him in the front seat? Never. Only when he was driving us around, maybe.
He's the glue. I'm sorry. For us, he's the glue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great to catch up again, my friend. Congrats again on the BC Football Hall of Fame.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. It means a lot coming from you guys, and it's great to see you.
Talk soon. The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
It's Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, and we're pleased to be joined here by the CEO and sporting director of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, Mr. Axel Schuster. Axel, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great. We're looking forward to the match on Saturday. Needless to say, it's a huge one, given where you guys in Minnesota are in the MLS West standings. But first things first, I just want to take the temperature of your club. How do you feel about your club at the moment as we approach the final few games here in the MLS playoffs?
You're right. It's an interesting time. It's an hugely important game tomorrow, and I think so. The same about the last games, and we had some discussions. I also spoke with the team that we have to use this now also to prepare us for the playoffs. I think every game is a little bit like a playoff game. We have to get us into this special mood that the special the special vibe that you need for a playoff game. Playoff games are different. It's a fight for every meter on the pitch. It's very often tight games, not that open, and very little things decide about results. So, and I think we are working on that, and at the same time, we are coming from a long stretch, and it's also an interesting exercise tomorrow, because tomorrow it will be about willpower, how much energy you can get out of your body, even if you're tired, and getting over these challenges. So that overall, I'm very happy with where we are at. We are 1 point behind where we have been last year, so I'm pretty optimistic. I'm absolutely confident that we will have a better season than last year. I'm also still optimistic and confident that we will make it into the top 7 at least, and have a second round playoff spot with that. I also know that there's some work ahead of us, and that no opponent is an easy one, and that we only play other teams that also fight for something. But I also see that as a opportunity to prepare us for whatever the scenario in the playoffs is then.
For like a split second, you guys were fully healthy. But even at fully healthy, you weren't fully ready, because Stuart Armstrong and Nadir Ocampo weren't quite ready to go more than 60 minutes. And in case of Stuart Armstrong, not even 45 yet. I don't want Major League Soccer to adopt the rest of the world soccer schedule. I don't think it would work in North America. I don't think people would buy into January games of soccer on this continent. But that summer transfer window is a weird one for you guys, isn't it? Because you are a more skilled team than you were in May and June, but you can't really trot that out really until February. I mean, you're not going to have Stuart Armstrong and Nadir Ocampo ready to roll like they are truly until February. So, teams like you and RSL made huge changes and brought in a lot of good talent, but both you and RSL, I think, are the two examples in the West where it's a bit of a risk here for this season to see those players actually help you guys.
Yeah, you know what? We did it also knowing this fact and having the belief that our team is strong enough and was strong enough already before to get us into the playoffs. And I still believe that they will be a great addition then at the playoff time. I would say both Stuart is in the 4th week, almost 5th week now of his preseason. And it's good to explain that, people. He came out of a time of 10 weeks with no team training. So he was literally like our players look like at beginning of January when we show up for camp the first time. And of course, he's not able to play games and on that level where we are at yet right now at the beginning. But now he's getting closer, and we played Tigres last year after 4 weeks and 5 weeks, and we started into the season after 6 weeks. And he will get to that soon. And so we still think that he will be a very helpful addition. Same with Edir later in the season. And when we signed them, we were pretty sure that we will make it without them to that point and have them then after. I would say what we are more struggling with right now is that we have some, and that's a good thing, but we have some more international players who are leaving for certain games, that also is more load on their legs, and that some of them came back injured, like Kubas, some of them got injured after that. And I would say the amount of games that we play right now, and a lot of teams in MLS play now, if you have in addition a lot of national team players, becomes something that is hard to balance with not having more players available, because our squads haven't been increased. The numbers of eligible players, the number of senior spots haven't been increased for many, many years. But we play like 10, 20 more games than we have many years ago. And so we're trying to find this balance, because we also, and everyone can believe me, we want to have everyone ready at the time when it really matters. And so we also have to sacrifice at some point around those games now. Could we have pushed Goldie into the last game? Yes, we could. But would that have bettered his situation? No. And would it have put us on risk that he's maybe out at the end of the year when we play playoff games? Yes.
Well, workload in international games dovetails perfectly with what I was planning to ask you here. And forgive us here, Schuster. We are just catching up on something I'm sure you were attuned to back in August when that LAFC match had to be rescheduled because of their performance in League's Cup. It comes next weekend. It comes now in an international window where you're going to be without Ryan Gauld, Sam Adekugbe, and Ali Ahmed, if not more, who are called to international duty. At the time, was there any other window that would have worked for this rescheduled game? Was this a negotiation between the two clubs and MLS? Were you just told that it had to be this day? And how do you feel about having to play a critical match next week, missing all these players on international duty?
No, unfortunately, there was no other available date. Or luckily, because we have been in the Canadian Championship final and LAFC was in the Open Cup final. And that actually would have been the only open spot. Everyone knows we're playing Wednesday, Saturday now in, I think, the fourth week in a row. And there is no available date. It shows how full packed our schedule is now at these times with all these additional competitions, Leagues Cup, Canadian Championship with 2-leg competitions, Champions League. So there is not a lot of dates available at that time. And so we have to play an international window. But I also want to remind everyone in our organization and every fan and you that in the last international window when we had to play with a lot of players out, we played a very, very good game against Dallas. And so our depth is good and it is on to these players. And hopefully then I'm very optimistic Stu will be a step further and can help us because he didn't got called up. And we will have a team on the pitch that will compete with LAFC. And LAFC has also nationality players gone. So no reason to be concerned.
Have you spoken to Vanny about what this squad looks like for this match this weekend? Is Ryan going to be given any time this weekend?
Look, as I said, we don't take any risks, but I'm very optimistic that we will see more players available, let's say it this way, for this game against Minnesota than we had against Seattle. Mm-hmm. And I'm also very optimistic that we will see another team performance because it wasn't our typical performance. It was a game where literally nothing worked, where I think other than Fafa and Brian in the first half, but every player had his challenges. It felt also like a game where we have been mentally tired. Our decision-making was slow. Our reaction time was slow. So it was the one game off that I give the team, that I allow a team to have in each half of a season. That happens to every team. It was very unfortunate that we had this performance against this big rival in that game. But for me, the more important thing is how we deal with it and how we react to it. And if we tomorrow show our normal performance and we get our best performance onto the pitch and we beat Minnesota as we have done in Minnesota, and then we are a step further into where we want to be at the end of the season.
Attended the Canadian Championship match last week, Axel, and while I think a lot of your fans are delighted to once again lift the Voyageurs Cup, 3-time defending reigning champion now of that tournament, I sense that the big game here is to finally see a deep MLS playoff run from this club. What do you think? Would you be satisfied with anything less than a deep run in the MLS playoffs?
No. Internally, we have said from the beginning of the season where we want to put the bar. We want to put the bar to compete for position 4 in the Western Conference. But ultimately, our goal is to definitely get into the second round of the playoffs, or third round. First round is play-in. Second round is the top 8. So to get one step further than we have been last year. And nobody should misunderstand me. If we are once there, we want to win the next game as well. But you first have to get there. And this best of 8, the 3-game competition that we have seen last year with LAFC is a hurdle we first have to jump over, and what has to be our target. And I would say the way you framed it, I wouldn't be satisfied with anything less. And then everything more is absolutely welcome.
Quickly on the Canadian Championship, have you voiced any of your concerns of bringing that back into June? Is there any way to shift that schedule? Because that was not ideal timing for you guys, not your fault at all. But can you weigh in on that, on whether or not it can be moved and back to? Because I think it provides a better atmosphere. Never mind clogging your schedule.
Yeah, we have to accept the realities.
Yes.
We wanted to play in the Canadian Championship more two-leg competitions because it benefits more markets. So that has added 2 more games in the earlier rounds. On top of that, we played the Leagues Cup in the middle, where no Canadian MLS team can really play a leg. So we actually had the semifinal with first leg before the Leagues Cup, second leg behind the Leagues Cup. So I think we are really running out of dates, and I don't see any scenario how that becomes better. Next year we have Gold Cup. We cannot play a Canadian Championship game during the Gold Cup because our national team players are gone, and this competition matters about Canadians. The following year we have the World Cup. So we definitely think about how, and we have spoken with the CSA, how to find a better way to promote this final if it is at a later time in the year. But we have to learn from what we have seen last year and how we have seen it years before. And we are actually now probably the club that can do the best analytics on it, because we have had three finals in a row at different dates, and we can help the CSA here also with data.
Compare and contrast.
Tournaments, schedules, player procurement. You've got a lot on your plate,
Yes.
Axel. We thank you for taking the time here. Wish you the best of luck tomorrow against Minnesota. It's 4:30 start at BC Place, everybody. Don't forget. And, of course, in the remaining schedule and into the playoffs. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Retriever Golden Ale.
There's some price from the historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. It's the Great Clips text message inbox. More on that in a moment. Love this time of year in sports. So much going on, like gigantic weekend in Vancouver sports, needless to say, with the Lions and Whitecaps having huge games with playoff implications. The Canucks wrapping up their preseason, getting ready for the start of a new NHL season. Then, everything else you've got going on in the world of sports with the baseball playoffs and NFL, all of that. One thing I'll say, just piggybacking off our final question and interview there with Giulio Caravatta earlier in the show, I noticed that Amar Doman made the rounds of some of the business networks this week. Yesterday, he just wrapped up a $255 million, that's U.S. acquisition of a lumber firm. Now, I imagine that took a lot of his attention and time. That's kind of a big transaction. And now with the Grey Cup, less than 2 months away, I think the owner is going to be exceptionally focused on his team and what is happening here. And look, I like Rick Campbell a lot. Boy, Wally used to always talk about apprenticeships in terms of, moving your way up to head coach and GM. And Rick absolutely served his over the years in Edmonton and Calgary. And then, of course, getting the big whistle in Ottawa and winning a Grey Cup there. And he has done a damn good job here. Let's face it, the last 2 years before this one, that was a really good football club. Not complete, not better than Winnipeg, but a really good football club. And I think all facets of the job as well, in terms of, the public face and all those sorts of responsibilities, Rick has done very well. That said, this year has not been his Mona Lisa.
It's strangely, I don't know that there's an obvious reason why that is the case.
No.
Yeah.
And look, there's heat on Dave Dickinson in Calgary. They're not having a great season. They are accustomed to winning there. You do wonder, if things go poorly here for the Leos, whether Rick Campbell's replacement might be on the other sideline tonight. Given Dave's history, of course, with this franchise and the market. And it might just be better for both men now to, move on and get a fresh start elsewhere from where they're at. So one of the underlining storylines here to the game tonight is Campbell's future and, of course, Dickinson's future in Calgary. All right. Well, to the people we go. Survey some of your comments to us over the past week, and it's all brought to you by our friends at Great Clips. With more than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada, Great Clips is the world's largest hair salon brand, official hair salon of the NHL salons, locally owned and operated, open 7 days a week. Your time is valuable. Use the Great Clips check-in app to see the wait time, check in on your phone, get your haircut when you want. For more information, go to greatclips.com. Great Clips.
It's going to be great, and it feels great to be jumping back into the inbox, and we'll survey social media for this sort of feedback, as we did here for at NHL_Wheelander on Twitter. The Canucks had Mikheyev and PDG on their top two lines in Game 7 of the second round. They might not have 109 points next year, but there's no doubt the team on paper is significantly better. We'll have to fact check that. Guess what? PDG was on the fourth line in Game 7.
Okay.
But McCabe was a second liner.
I remember.
In warm-up.
I remember. I mean, he was actually getting some chances in the playoffs, and of course, wasn't hurting them defensively. Had speed and length and things like that.
Now, off of a special team, would PDG get a twirl with somebody higher up the? Maybe. And the fact that PDG was being leaned on in a Game 7 at all does speak to the depth. And again, going back to the lineup for tonight's preseason game. I mean, it's good to see that even with Dakota Joshua, a pretty important forward out, all the flanks
they're definitely better at wing. They're definitely better at wing. Whether they're better at center without Lindholm, I think is a tough argument to make right now. Whether they're better than on defense without Zadorov, I think is a tough argument to make right now. And of course, the common tie, sadly, no Thatcher Demko in that Game 7, no Thatcher Demko right now.
Okay, into the inbox itself for some old school type of feedback from JC. A hot take. The biggest advantage of Ratu's development to the Canucks is trade bait. Do you dare parlay a young developer? Again, 21 years of age.
So
he's a center.
So he's obviously not untouchable. Don't get me wrong.
No, of course.
But with where you are depth-wise organizationally down the middle, I don't think that would be wise.
No.
If there is a team that is drunk on Ratu, then of course you go make the trade.
You're listening, sure, but I'll not say that it's the biggest development.
No, it's Luke.
Yeah,
for me.
I'll go Luke there as well. And then tell me I'm wrong from Tyler. Why wouldn't 31 teams be calling the NHL about the Leonard situation? Pullman doesn't show up to report for evaluation, so he gets paid, and the Canucks no longer have cap issues.
As we talked about in the opening segment. Precedent has been set here.
Like there's a lot of people in tough situations on LTIR. Like a concussion is a career-ending concussion.
How about Carey Price, Blake?
Yeah.
Carey Price has gone through some shit, and he's been open about it. His $10.5 million salary, still the highest goaltender salary in the league, despite the fact the contract was signed 7 years ago. What if he just doesn't show up and the Habs go, oh, well, we got to get cap relief from this. We'll continue paying him, but we got to get cap relief.
Like
nonsense.
It sounds like maybe.
And I heard Daly's mealy-mouthed explanation with Halford and Brough, and it's just bullshit.
And
it's just the league making it up as they go
It's
along.
not bullshit. What he's saying is true, that it's a very sensitive situation. But there's a lot of sensitive situations. There's a lot of guys that are going through some stuff. And their cap hits count.
Yeah, exactly. No, the NHL does itself no favors with things like this because people make the charge, and rightfully so. You're making it up as you go along, and you're giving preferential treatment to certain franchises. Whereas, of course, the Vancouver Canucks got nothing of the sort with Roberto Luongo and the recapture penalties, which were retroactive and vindictive.
Mm-hmm. Never mind, again, a guy like a Tucker Pullman. And we're not just saying this for the Canucks' sake. There's a lot of teams that would be like,
no, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
And that's our dip into the Great Clips inbox.
Well, let's get them involved here as we do daily with results from the poll question. Thursday, we asked you, where does Nils Höglander spend the majority of his time? Top 6, bottom 6 on another team. The people said?
Bottom 6.
Correct. Percentage?
48.
56. 36 said top 6. Only 8% said another team. Donnybrook, anywhere they ask him to. First to fourth line. So versatile, so valuable. Just wish they would lock him up long-term here at a good number before he goes off. Mal says he's going to take Sprong's spot on the second line. Would not be the least bit surprised
Good spot
there.
for him. Yep.
And Michael, if the Canucks free agent winners hit and they're relatively healthy again, I really think Höglander will eventually be one of the chips used to get another top 4 defenseman. Errors and omissions from yesterday's show and beyond. Blake corrected me in the moment, but Derek Forbert was injured more than he was a healthy scratch last season. Salary cap this year is $88 million in the NHL. Didn't specify that. And earlier in the week, I said this when the Caps LAFC game was rescheduled earlier in the spring. It was rescheduled in the summer.
Yes. When Leagues Cup happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything to self-report, Blake?
No, we did have something from a ways back.
Oh. I'm all ears.
I would neglected the inbox, folks. I'll be better with the inbox. Jason said Blake was talking about flying direct to Salt Lake. So there's no confusion. Direct flight means the plane may make one or more stops along its route. Non-stop means you'll fly straight from one airport to another.
Good.
From Bird, the retired airline pilot.
Very good, Bird. Captain Bird.
So there, I know you like it when I...
Mm-hmm. I also like airline pilots.
Asan says error on Blake in the opening
very
segment.
Interesting people.
Asan on Wednesday said Blake Hirosi's getting assessed for a concussion. Injured players can't be sent down. That's why he remains. I don't remember the context.
No,
of
we mentioned that.
Yeah,
we did say that.
Yeah,
we did say
that. And it becomes a cap issue for them as he goes on IR and his cap has to be taken account for. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Appreciate you connecting and spending some time with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, including YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, formerly Twitter, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. We are live on many of those platforms starting at noon Pacific. Mentioned that change earlier. Noon Pacific going forward for the new hockey season. And, of course, support the sponsors you hear us telling you about.
High noon on Monday. Don't forget.
Noon. Keep it local. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.